Hey, Jamie.
Hey, Chad, what's going on? Good evening. Every week, right? Every week, we're like, is it going to work? Here we are. So,
It worked.
and what we think anyway.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Is this thing on? All right. Well, yeah. So, I'm Jamie Widener. That's Chad Thomas over there. We are members of Jott-Nyx Paranormal, and this is Paranormal Lens. So, we every week try to bring you a topic of one of our choosing. The other knows not much, if anything, about it. And the subject matter expert in this case is me tonight. So we're going to talk about the Lake Michigan Triangle, which is a phenomenon that's occurring in, well, Lake Michigan, right? Going on for hundreds of years. It's in the name, right? It's always in the name.
Yep.
Something that's been going on for a couple hundred years there. And maybe longer in recorded history of settlers at least. So before we ever get that far, Mr.
Uh-huh.
Thomas, what's going on with you, sir?
Let's yeah.
Yeah, great.
The fall play was this past weekend for the kids.
It was.
We had that. So that was good. Other than that, it's just been hectic. Lots going on.
Yeah.
And as Jim just reminded me, it's Thanksgiving this week, Turkey Day.
Somebody said to me tonight that it was Thanksgiving Eve. And I thought, okay, I'll take that. It could be worse.
So, yep. Jim's on top of it.
And it's funny. I don't know about you, but Thanksgiving Eve used to be like the big party day, and now I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
I remember that.
Yeah, once upon a time, right?
Yeah.
For those who are going to go, celebrate responsibly. That way, you can have a food coma the next day. I hope you all do that as well. So, oh my gosh, the fall play was fantastic. It was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein by the Penn Manor School District Theater Department. Well done production. It was so good. It's going to get to travel to the state competition later in January.
Well, it's not a competition.
State showcase, sorry, in January for the state thespian troupe. All of them come together. It's a thing.
Thespian conference.
If you know, you know.
Yep.
So it's really cool to see the show go on the road. It's now off Broadway by traveling. So,
and I'm going to help put it on a truck, take it off a truck, and all those fun things in January.
I don't want to be part of that one. I'm just going to stay in the back. Like, hey, if you need me to chaperone, I'm good. But my back.
I see how that goes.
Like that. It happens every time somebody has to help them move. Oh, my back. And then otherwise, I'm out there like lugging bags of mulch and stuff around. I don't know. Yeah. So, but it was great. It was a wonderful production, and it just coming off spooky season, it was great to have Frankenstein one last pop of the stuff we all love, and the really great adaptation too for the kids' side.
It was a different adaptation, so it was sort of cool. So,
some would say it was electrifying.
On that note, Jamie.
Good night, all.
What were we here to talk about?
Oh, yeah. We got to do an episode. Oh crap, that's right. All right, so the Lake Michigan Triangle. There is, well, I think we all know what Lake Michigan is. I hope we do by now, right? So there are Great Lakes. They spell out the acronym HOMES: Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. M is in the middle, so it kind of is physically a little bit too. But Lake Michigan is generally defined as an area between the triangle. I'm sorry, is generally defined as an area between Ludington, Michigan, and Benton Harbor, Michigan, and also Manitowoc, Wisconsin. So it is not a triangle, a square, or perfect triangle. Is more of an isosceles. If you know that area at all, Wisconsin tips in just a little bit above Illinois, so it is basically the largest part of the lake in this territory, which explains some of the things I'm about to share with you, the opportunity for it to happen. But over the course of hundreds of years, there are many instances of strange events that have occurred in this region of the lake, most of which cannot be explained away by logic or reason. We'll get into that in a second. So first of all, some fun facts about Lake Michigan. In size, it is 200 million, 220 406 square miles and is the second largest Great Lake, only to Superior, which is obviously Superior.
Okay.
It's entirely within the U.S. as it borders Michigan on the top end of it and most of the east side, and then Illinois and Wisconsin to the west. It is the world has the world's largest freshwater sand dunes on its shores. This surprised me. It is the water supply for the city of Chicago. Now, it shouldn't surprise me, I guess, because it's right there, but there's a lot of water coming out of the lake for the size of Chicago being our third largest city. And approximately 12 million people live along the lake. And of course, most of the Chicago metro area. So the triangle itself, it is the points that connect Manitowoc, Wisconsin, Ludington, Michigan, and Benton Harbor, Michigan, as I said. The premise here is that the Lake Michigan Triangle was originally presented in the book The Great Lakes Triangle by Jay Corley back in 1977. So he's the one that first kind of coined the phrase and connected some of the dots on his research. He based his premise on numerous shipwrecks and aerial disappearances in between the triangulated points and unexplained phenomena, including reported balls of fire in the sky, blocks of ice falling from the sky, and strange hovering lights to go with unexplained disappearances and other eerie encounters. Many believe.
Jamie, I just want to point out that Bert has already decided that this cannot be a road trip. It's going to be a boat trip.
Well, actually, it can be a road trip, Bert. So hold that thought. I will get to that in a moment. But a boat would be. I don't want to take a boat trip. Not wait. Well, I'll tell you why. There is a little bit of both here. So,
all
right. And the strange hovering lights, many believe, is from UFO activity drawn to the area due to a portal or vortex that might be inside the triangle. We'll see. So the initial report that started the unexplained incidences and occurrences here happened to be a French ship called Le Griffon that disappeared without a trace in the area in 1679. So we can go back quite a while. And back in the day, and through most of the occurrences, these are going to be wooden ships as well, although there are some more modern ships toward the end of the tale here. Others claim that in an 1891 disappearance of the ship Thomas Holm was the first instance of the triangle. And this is again a ship that disappeared without a trace. I do want to caveat that in 2006, AT&T found the Holm while laying underground lines for telecommunication. But the eerie thing here is the ship was found in near perfect condition. Going forward from there are a lot of other instances, and I'll go through a couple of them here for you. On November 22nd of 1912, the Ruse Simmons left Thompson, Michigan for Chicago carrying a load of Christmas trees. Captain Herman Scheneman offers a free ride to the lumberjacks who delivered the trees to the ship. The crew of 16 plus the lumberjacks never arrived in Chicago, and no traces of the ship were ever found. Actually, a whole year later, Christmas trees began washing ashore on Michigan's shoreline, and a fisherman in the Two Rivers, Michigan area catches Captain Scheneman's wallet. Now, again, looking ahead a little bit, the wreck of the Rose Simmons was found in 160 feet of water in the mid-2000s, and there was not a clear indication of why she had sunk. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's going to be a pattern, I believe, here. Moving ahead to 1921, the Rose Belle, a two-masted schooner, was found overturned with no evidence as to why. There was not a distress call, and the 11-person crew was lost and not found. An investigation of the hull showed signs of a collision, but no other vessel was found, and no reports of an accident that day. The U.S. Coast Guard investigated, and without any corroborating evidence, determined there was not a collision. So what caused the ship to turn over and have hull damage? Right. Questions without answers.
Right.
And on April 28th, in 1937, Captain George R. Donner of the O.M. McFarland, and by the way, these ships have fantastic names. Like, we don't name stuff like this anymore.
No.
O.M. McFarland went to rest in his cabin after hours on the bridge navigating the ship through icy waters. As the ship neared its destination at Port Washington, Wisconsin, a crew member went to wake him and found his cabin door locked from the inside. Not that unusual, right?
Right.
You just don't want to be bothered. You lock the door behind you. However, after several attempts to get Donner to open the door, the crew finally used a key, but the captain was not inside. The ship was searched, but Donner was never found then or ever since.
Hmm.
It's an odd disappearance of just one person.
So he didn't wash up later.
He did not. Never been seen or found.
Hmm.
So that's all ships so far. Here's
Right.
something different. On June 23rd, 1950, Northwest Airlines Flight 2501 was flying over the Triangle going from New York to Seattle with a stop intended in Minneapolis, Minnesota, when it seemingly disappeared from the sky. At 11:37 p.m., the pilot requested a descent from 3,500 feet to 22,500 feet due to an electrical storm. The request was denied, and minutes later, the plane disappeared from radar. Despite a massive search, the only physical evidence found was a blanket with the Northwest Airlines logo. And according to two police officers who were near the scene that night, they reported there was a strange red light hovering over the water about 2 hours after the plane disappeared.
Hmm.
Now, this is where, open this, suggestion, right?
Right.
So many theorized the plane was taken by aliens. However, remains and other remnants of the passengers and crew did begin to wash ashore in western Michigan several days after the disappearance. But the ship itself was never found.
Hmm.
So much so that for several years now, maritime adventure author Clive Cussler has funded several searches for the wreckage that including with him the Michigan Shipwreck Research Associates, so a team of underwater professional divers. To date, no actual wreckage of the aircraft has been found still. So
Interesting.
it's just gonzy.
Hmm. I just threw. Todd had a question. Is there a known number of ships that have sunk in the triangle?
There are reported number of ships, but a known number, no. So it's in the hundreds at this point, between large ships and small crafts. Now, you got to realize, the adventure weekender, um, you know, all kinds of silly things can happen. We'll get into some of this, what could be in a moment, but there's a lot of it's a mix between like ships that would be sturdy and commerce type ships into the private stuff. I didn't get into any of the private smaller boats just because there are so many of them.
Right.
Okay, so and on November 18th, in 1958, the Carl D. Bradley sank with when its hull mysteriously split into two. The ship was a robust 630-foot steam-powered freighter in service for 31 years. At the time of the incident, there were reported to be 60-mile-an-hour winds, which, Chad, that is considered to be gale force.
Right.
And not that would blow Zoe away, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. Any any small child would be gone. And also 30-foot waves were reported. So this was not a calm day. But the hull breaking and the ship sinking happened so fast that there were only two survivors from the 35-man crew. And
Wow.
they had no idea what happened to them. So it's unusual. This is now a modern ship in 1958. This was a steel hull, um, a ship that had been in service for 30 years, coming up and down the coastline of the lake, going through all the weather and all the seasons. So this was
Hmm.
quite unique. All right, so a lot of ships, right? And here's
Right.
here's here's where we connect the dots for Bert and the road trip. This one's a little different. Stephen Kubacki was a 23-year-old student at Hope College in Michigan. On February 20th, 1978, he went on a solo cross-country skiing trip near, and I'm going to say this wrong, Saugatuck, I think, Saugatuk, Michigan, when he disappeared. And any of my Michigan friends out there, please, I apologize in advance for that one, and after, of course, too. So, but um, he disappeared. The next day, snowmobilers found his equipment, and police found footprints on the ice. The footprints abruptly ended, which implied Kubacki fell through the ice and met his demise. The case was closed, and the mystery of his disappearance was solved. Right?
Maybe.
Not so fast. On May 5th, 1979, about 14 months later, Kubacki showed up in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, where he found himself lying in a field of grass about 700 miles from Lake Michigan. He had no memory of the lost time, and his backpack contained random maps. Interestingly, he was wearing a T-shirt from a marathon in Wisconsin and felt that he had been doing a lot of running, but had no memory of doing so.
I just got chills, Jamie.
Is this amnesia or an alien abduction?
Right. Interesting.
You decide.
Or both.
And speaking of aliens, or both, yeah, it could be. You know what? When things like this happen, and I know we're gonna get to this. I know we're gonna get to this because it's on the schedule. But
Mm.
we're going to get eventually to Travis Walton and his issue and disappearance in Arizona back in the 70s. The 50th anniversary of that is coming up in the fall, and I put on the schedule right around there to celebrate it, or whatever you want to call that. I
Right.
don't think it celebrates
Commemorate
it.
it.
Yeah, memorialize it. Um, but he disappeared for a few days, not a few months, and had no memory of or recollection of what happened to him, other than the issue of what happened that night. With the episode, but the time in between, at least not right away. And then he does recount. Eventually, pops of memory come back to him, and so you can piece together what he believes happened to him. And it's a fascinating story. So, looking forward to getting to that. And I think it's like the first week in November next year. So tease, a little
Yep.
ahead time. Reason to stick with us all that time.
Actually, it's the last week in October. Yeah,
Last week in October. Okay, so the anniversary is November 4th, I believe. So, okay. So speaking of UFOs, March 8th, 1994, not too far ago, a UFO sighting was reported in Grand Haven, Michigan, where what was described as large balls of white light and what appeared to be a string of Christmas lights were seen floating in the sky for several hours. And 911 call logs confirmed these claims. Calls came from Grand Haven to Benton Harbor, which is the southern point of the triangle. Due to the amount of calls, the 911 dispatch called the National Weather Service for help. Stationed at Muskegon County Airport, meteorologist Jack Bushong took that call, and upon reviewing his radar screen, he found what appeared to be a large metallic object on the radar screen that he guesstimated was 5,500 feet above nearby South Haven, Michigan. The object appeared to be hovering and then simply split apart and disappeared. Shortly after, several smaller objects were tracked moving at high speeds. The objects appeared to move together in a triangle pattern and then separate. This was a big deal, and you see through the slides there are several newspapers articles about it the next day and days after. And lastly, just to make it weird enough, believe it or not, Mr. Thomas, there is a Stonehenge-like feature in the lake.
What?
Of course there is, right? Why not?
Uh-huh.
So the formation was discovered in 2007 by Northwestern Michigan College professor Mark Holy. The feature is found while mapping shipwrecks and is approximately 40 feet underwater. The site has a similar alignment to Stonehenge in England. There is an outer boulder that appears to have a carving of a mastodon. Now, reference-wise, mastodons aren't like in the zoos, right?
Right.
So the last mastodon went extinct about 11,000 years ago. And to date, the exact location has not been released to protect the site from those who may disturb the location and damage it. And of course, this leads to a lot of things, right? This had led some skeptics to be skeptical about the existence, but also has led to theories that include the existence of a portal or wormhole. Again, similar sites around the world. It's a beacon for the extraterrestrials to come to, which would explain the UFO sightings and other odd things. That it controls the weather, and it causes, therefore, ships and airplanes to sink and disappear. And the reality is that whatever it was meant to be used for was created at a time when the water level was much lower, and the land was on, this location was once on dry land. And a fun fact, if I can, there is also a formation like this, also underwater off the western coast of Scotland. That's even older than Stonehenge. And considering what this was created on dry land and is now at a 40-foot depth, please do tell me again how there's no such thing as global warming. Yeah. So, dude, what's going on here? Right? Like, there's got some stuff. There's no clear, definite answers to anything. And a safe or logical better explanation would be its extreme weather patterns, perhaps uncharted underwater obstructions, rogue waves, And I found out there's a thing called wind waves as well, which are waves that are kicked up by high winds. The gale
Mhm.
force winds is not uncommon. Wide open spaces, so the wind is no break, so it just keeps pushing. They will kick up waves, which of course create havoc on ships. Most of the disappearances here are ships as well. There was a small plane that went down, a private plane, but the people were found, but they had a total instrument failure. So it was one of those things where it could have just been the age of a Piper Cub, single engine plane. But there were people who crashed were survived and rescued by a local boat.
Okay.
So um, there's another thing here, maybe anyway. Um, there are believed to be magnetic anomalies that have been reported where compasses have been off as much as 4 to 5 degrees westward from magnetic north. Well, that's not a significant differential overall. It may be enough to cause accidents over previously charted or even uncharted rocks and shoals. This
Right.
leads to a theory that there are significant magnetic objects or anomalies under the lake, which what would that be, right?
Right.
And if you want to believe in the UFO phenomenon, then here, there's a UFO base or something like that. That certainly could play into that.
Hmm.
And kind of all of these are reasonable and acceptable, for each independent issue, or incident. But when you look at the sum of all the events and for the duration of them, there seems to be something more going on here. Might the underwater Stonehenge-like feature have something to do with it? I'll say maybe.
Yeah.
Might there be a UFOs utilize the vastness of the lake as a base? Yeah, I'll also say maybe.
Right.
Could there be a wormhole or portal in or over the lake? Yeah, again, I'll say maybe. Will there ever truly be known? We know what's going on here or why. Well, this one I'm going to have to say is highly unlikely.
Right.
So I'm going to cite some sources here, and I think I'd like to discuss a lot of this with you. And I have something sort of point but off point to share as well with at the end.
Okay.
So we used information from thevintagenews.com, milwaukeemagazine.com, worldatlas.com, fox17online.com, and vos.noaa.gov. .com or .gov, not .gov.com. There's such a thing. So, Chad, what do you got
I
here?
yeah, I had never heard of
Talk with the aliens. There it is.
yeah.
That's
I
everything.
yeah, I didn't know much about this at all. Actually, I didn't know anything about this at all. I'll be upfront with you. So this is it's just intriguing. The whole mini Stonehenge thing, and I pulled up some pictures that I like a picture that I on Google, and it's it's miniature. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
like
very small. Right.
it,
It's tight. It's a tight formation.
it's tight, but it's the stones are the size of people.
Yeah.
They're not towering over 'em. But it's
Well,
intriguing.
it's
Like
because they didn't. We didn't grow big stones back 11,000 years ago.
they needed time to.
They're matured yet.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, that alone is interesting because it's out of place.
right,
Here we are, North America, and certainly not to say that the indigenous tribes of natives, Americans certainly could have done this and could, likely did create this,
right,
but here we go with this, and this is not unlike the pyramids. We have pyramids in Egypt, we have pyramids in Central America, we have pyramid, here in the States and in North America, all at times when there was not world travel.
right,
These are organizations of people who were never met each other, never even knew existed of any existence of each other. There's no reason that we were doing all of this in different eras, but up around the same window of time. So it makes you wonder, what's the cause?
right.
Is it some kind of a contact? You ever go back to aliens or something like it, right?
Yeah,
And is that a physical ship? Is that a portal opening? Is that what's the way the contact occurred? And for it to happen around the world is crazy.
yeah. It's amazing. Um, I'm trying to see if I can figure out how to pull this up real quick. Because there's also another image that I found. Let's see if I can mess up things here.
Well, I'm going to tell you this.
Okay, yeah,
I have had the opportunity in the past career to travel a lot.
Mhm.
for work. And being here in South Central Pennsylvania, the hub to get anywhere else in the world westward is Chicago. And I would have a flight out of Harrisburg, or Harrisburg International. I love that, um, kind of thing. But the connection would be Chicago and then elsewhere. And looking back to the map, that has me flying directly over the triangle
Mhm.
every single back and forth each time, and that was like every week, for many years. And if I, I'm not saying I would have changed my plans, but if I had known that what I know now, then I might not have been wanting to go through Chicago. I would have taken that longer connection somewhere else, and had a much longer day of travel. But it's fascinating. And planes are up all the time, right?
Mhm.
And it is technically the safest means of travel. However, when a plane goes down because of the sheer amount of people on it, it's a much more tragic event than like a car accident where there's perhaps two people involved. It's two single occupancy vehicles. All are bad news. Don't be wrong. I'm not making anything of that. Uh,
Right.
but we have planes up all the time going over these areas. This area, the Bermuda Triangle, another one, the Alaska Triangle we talked about last year. The Dragon Triangle over the Pacific, we talked about last year as well.
Mhm.
And I say this all the time, and I sort of say it jokingly, but we need our 3 points and some spooky stuff in between. We got triangles all over the world, right?
Mhm.
When stuff keeps happening in certain places, and that's the kind of the account from the book, and back in '77, the guy just finally documented the stuff, started putting it as a collective together and
Right.
see the patterns, and it's fascinating that so much stuff has happened in this one reasonably small space.
Mhm. So this is that mini Stonehenge that you were talking
Yep.
about.
Yeah, there
Uh,
it is.
and then gonna share another one uh, that looks interesting too. This is I'm not sure what this is, but it's definitely was above water at some point. So
Yeah. So, and that's the kind of the thing, the lakes, everything has risen,
mhm,
and I guess they're going to continue to rise.
right. But this is laid out in a straight line
Yep.
with carvings on every stone.
Yep. In segmented stones. Yep.
Yeah. So what was it? Just
Well, this to me, and I'm, going back to my youth, my aspiration, I'll call it, was to be an archaeologist once upon a time, and these things fascinated me then. They still fascinate me now. Different path, a lot of time in between then and now, but there's still stories to be told in the things that we're discovering.
right.
And in 2007 to now is a long time, 17 years. And they still really don't understand the site that they found in this mini Stonehenge, much less anything else. That was there,
Right.
or is there.
Hmm.
And a couple thousand years ago, much less 11,000 or 10,000 years ago, this whole topography looks different. Even the stuff is still above ground looks a lot different. So
Right.
there might well have been a entire civilization or culture here that we really don't know anything about because largely it's underwater now. And the same issue with the formation in Scotland. I'm going to tell you it's like 100 yards off the shore, so it's well
Right.
underwater.
Hmm.
But again, rising seas.
Yep.
Here you go.
Or,
This
or Jamie,
could have
where
well been.
you are totally cutting out a whole amphibian life form here.
That's true. Thank you for that. This is Paranormal Lens after all, so we
Yeah.
have to have that whole wide angle.
Well,
Yeah, maybe this is like some Aquaman thing going on.
maybe you never know.
You never
Bert
know.
said maybe that's some sort of border wall.
Could
That
be.
so
Absolutely.
so yeah. There's so many possibilities, and we just have no.
Yep.
There's so much undiscovered about the Earth that we will probably never know. Um, and civilizations, and it's I think everybody as a kid, Jamie, wanted to be Indiana Jones, or
Yeah. Yeah.
so.
I don't I won't argue that, and that was my window as well.
Mhm.
My inspiration, I think, it's still, it's still my favorite movie to this day is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
Um, I don't care what part of it, what how much time is left, what time it is. If I catch it on TV, I stay on it. Um,
I mean, the property I grew up on was rural. It was a part of a farm at one point, and there was a corner in the back that they had used as a trash pile. Like that's where they put every like. So it was sort of cool to go back there and explore and dig and
until you got tetanus.
well, I didn't know about that when I was 7 or 8. I didn't care,
That's
but
true.
but
That's a good
it was we had rusty barbed wire. I would have gotten it from that first, but I think that's everybody like as a kid, when we had that opportunity to explore things like that, it opened a whole new world, and
Oh, absolutely.
as
Being here in the river towns, a lot of stuff there were a lot of things that were along the shores, industry and other things that are now long, long gone. And
Mhm,
the same idea. There's remnants. If
mhm,
you take the Northwest River Trail out of Columbia, one of the first things you come to is an old foundry
right,
facility, and it's a stone structure. It's still there. A little further up, there's a homestead. Like stuff like that. We just pour over those places all the time. And you get deeper into the woods and other places away from, like, say, Chickies between Columbia and Marietta. There's a lot of other old homesteads and stuff that were just so much fun. Now, knowing what I know now and having like a metal detector and things like that, who knows what we could have discovered? But
right,
just to be there and to just kind of explore and like what was here and just kind of hypothesize who could have lived here, why would they live here versus somewhere else closer to
mhm,
town. It's a lot of things. And welcome to the East Coast too. Like, the East Coast of the U.S. is our oldest area, so there's so many things here that are no longer that
right,
we brought with us, much less what was here with the Native Americans. So
right. And that maybe that's why some of the western areas are even more interesting, because the Native Americans were there so much longer
yeah,
before we started pushing them out of there.
and we haven't kind of trampled it yet as
Right.
far as build over things. And that's one of the things that, and we're getting off point a little bit here, but I'll say this part of it. One of the things that fascinates me about Europe is how many times, when they start doing something, they find another layer of another building. Even they're building buildings on top of buildings on top of buildings.
Right.
The old foundations are the new foundation kind of thing.
Hmm.
And we've done that here on the East Coast. We've taken over so much space. We're so packed in. But once we get to the Midwest and the West, the spaces are open still. And the opportunity to really explore everything. What we've brought with us as we were westward bound, and then obviously what was with here all along is fantastic. Oh, let's see. Here's a comment from Todd and Carmela. Slight side topic. I love side topics. That's what we do. Um, with North Jersey, to say it like it's spelled, with the drought conditions, there is a bridge called the Ghost Bridge that became visible after many years of being submerged in a reservoir. Oh, cool. Well, look it up. All right, we
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
Make
This is
note.
happening more and more. I've heard several bridges that have been discovered that were flooded because of because of industry moving on, making things better. So many towns were flooded, and just
Oh,
and
sure.
the drought is causing these things to come
Yep.
back to life. There's entire towns that are starting to show up again. So
I think it's Romania. There's a lake that was man-made and by a dam,
mhm,
and in the creation of it, a village was lost intentionally.
mhm,
But the high point of the village, of course, is a church steeple. And once the dam is released at a certain time of year, I guess whatever the rainy season is, the village starts to reemerge from the water, lowering. But the first thing that appears is this cross on the
mhm,
top of a church out in the middle of a lake that doesn't belong there at all. Um, so it's quite off-putting. But even here in with the Susquehanna River being our artery, there are several dams along it. The closest one to us, when the gates are open, there are village type settlements all along the shoreline on the river side of the train tracks, which are on the eastern side, um, that start to emerge slowly with the water level dropping, and then of course disappear once the gates are shut again and the river refills.
mhm.
But the Lake Aldred area, which is just south of us, is all part of that area that I speak to.
There's also some very cool Native American carvings that show up
Yep,
when that
there are.
happens as well.
Indian Steps, the area there, the museum,
Mm,
fantastic work. Yep, and even on our side of the shore too. And that's on the western side, but
mm,
absolutely.
yeah.
Um,
I'll have to do an episode on it. There's a lake in Georgia that has the same thing.
yep. Oh, there's a cemetery under that one. Yep, I know what that is.
You know, so
Yeah, didn't
yeah,
move anything, just flooded it. Yep.
yep.
Yeah, nothing creepy about that at all.
Oh yeah, there is. There's stories. So
Yeah, that's a great idea. All right. Well, I want to share one more thing, and this is not necessarily related to the Lake Michigan Triangle, but it is something in Lake Michigan. So, and this is not a surprise to say this, but there are numerous reports of ships dumping cargo in foul weather so as not to sink themselves.
right.
And I would bet there's many more of those efforts that we know about. With captain and crew doing their very best,
Hmm.
but protecting their own lives. Which takes me to a story, and this is going back to the Civil War, and near the end of the war, of course, the South was in a bind. They were the losses were mounting, and uh, the leadership was on the run, kind of thing. So Jefferson Davis was traveling with a lot of the Confederate gold in their reserves. This
Right.
is all they had left. So this is not a Lake Michigan or Lake Triangle story per se, but interesting no less and relatable. So near the end of the war, I think they were in Mississippi. They were, Davis was captured, and with him was a lot of gold, like I mentioned, and several wagons worth. Um, the interesting thing here is there were Union officers who, from Michigan, from Western Michigan, no less, who kind of confiscated a segment of that gold and secreted it back to Michigan when it got there. And this is in the Muskegon area, so it's not too far off the edge of the triangle. It's in, would be considered in the triangle area.
Hmm.
The gold was loaded onto a train car, which was then loaded onto a ship heading west. The ship hit rough weather and dumped the train car somewhere off the coast. That car has never been found. And if you're a fan of the History Channel, a couple years ago, there was a show hosted by or sponsored by the Laginas brothers, who are the Curse of Oak Island, called The Curse of Civil War Gold. I believe there's 2 seasons. They didn't find it either. And I was expecting a third season, but it never came, at least not yet. So, something interesting if you need an easy binge watch. A lot of history involved in that. A lot of
I,
tangible evidence was discovered too, especially with the families of the officers and the affluence that they kind of came into shortly thereafter the war, which could be connected to having that much gold. Um, and then how the gold was moving west was interesting as well, what it was going to be used for. So, at least in theory. So,
hmm. I thought you were suggesting a road trip there, Jamie,
well,
or
we always could take a road trip, you
yeah.
know. But what's fascinating to me is, this is one of those things where, technically it's not, the ship didn't go down, so therefore it's not a strange disappearance. But, there's a lot of things in the lake that, like cargo, and in
Right.
the day they didn't have shipping containers like we do now. So a lot of this were like, box cars and things like that were portable because they put it on rails and move it on and off ships.
Hmm.
A lot of the hoists and cranes and things like that you see now weren't in use yet. Excuse me, I think I have a hiccup coming here. Sorry. Um, so, the easy thing to do then was just when things got rough, just roll something off because you need the ballast. So, you got to save yourself. You get down with the ship. So interesting. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a whole lot more out there than we are well aware of, just
Mhm.
simply because of stuff like that as
And
well.
thinking back to your reference to the ship that was hit by something but didn't show up,
Yep.
and maybe we're talking some sort of lake creature.
Oh, go do tell. Go
No,
for it.
no, I'm just
I'm
maybe
saying it. Like cryptid. I'm in.
yeah, a cryptid of some sort.
Okay.
We know that we know that they exist in other lakes, but
Yep.
why not Lake Michigan? And is
Sure.
I can't remember, is Lake Michigan the deeper of them?
That's a number that I don't have, so I'm sorry, but it.
I mean, the Great Lakes are, the depth of them is amazingly, like, they're,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, Superior is technically an inland sea, by its size, so it's certainly the depth could be there as well. What's fascinating, and I'm going to go way back in time to our very first episode on Ogopogo.
Hmm.
I posed a question to Dave at that time, thinking, just looking at it roughly and doing math in my head and just kind of, drawing a line across the globe, but if you look at where Okanagan is, in British Columbia, if you run a line across the world, just a longitude line, you're passing by the lakes, you're passing by, um, um, gosh, Nessie, not
Right.
Nessie. I did an episode on this. I should know where I'm at.
Yeah.
Vermont,
Uh,
and straight across the globe, and you get into, Loch Ness.
uh,
So, my question was, is this a habitable zone? Because there seems to be stuff.
right.
Here we are, two very different points of the world between Scotland and British Columbia, no less. Are we dealing with something there? It just could be a habitable zone for something that's plausibly still with us, that was, thought to be long gone, and because it's in the water and, not readily available to be visible, because, and these lakes are not small. Um, what do we
No,
think?
Lake Michigan is 925 feet deep.
Okay,
So
pretty
Lake
deep.
Superior goes to 1,300 feet deep.
All right. So I think it's plausible.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely below what people are going to be diving and discover.
Yeah, that's not a casual dive either. You got to plan for that depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is our friend Bert Lynch right here.
Uh-huh.
I'll stay on shore and watch you search for the monster. Thanks, buddy. Uh, so that's my stuff.
Uh-huh.
So the Lake Michigan Triangle is, it has calmed, um, over the last few decades. In the '90s, being the last big issue with UFOs, the gentleman's disappearance in the '90s as well. You know, and lost time, at least. I'll say this. It's, to me, growing up in the '70s. The big thing then was the Bermuda Triangle, right? Ships were going missing, planes were going awry and disappearing, all kinds of odd stuff, and this, the don't go there kind of thing. That was kind of the public presentation toward it, like all this mystery. And here we are, 40 plus years later, 50 years later, whatever it is. Um, I mean, there's hardly a word of anything, you know. Now, technology's gotten better, right? The way we make things has gotten better. A lot of the ships, the early set of ships that went away, were schooners and wood ships with masts, you know, and certainly didn't have radios and other, traditional signal systems. They didn't have transponders or black boxes
Right.
or any of that kind of stuff. Something to tell us where they would be positioning wise. No GPSs. Um, so the world's changed for the better in a lot of ways to make sure we're safer and, more understanding of our positions and so forth. So, charts have gotten better as well. The underwater obstruction issues, things like that. But it's fascinating to me that, these two hotspot areas that had lots of stuff happen in them have kind of calmed down. So is that because there's a spot somewhere else in the world instead, or is it that the portal that they could be, or the vortex that they might be, those things have closed for us or to us? Either way,
Or is it a cycle? Like,
or is it like, right?
I mean, it could come back.
Absolutely,
Or, if it's aliens, they've learned what they needed to learn and said, I'm not, we're not hanging out there.
people are crazy.
So Bert said, if you believe the scientist, all the land was once connected. So it's Nessie's sibling that, and,
Possibly,
that is a possibility. So,
absolutely. The one thing we figured out with, the Ogopogo is that, the lake that's in connects to a river, which connects to the ocean,
mhm,
and Nessie and Loch Ness can connect to the ocean as well on high tide. The Great Lakes can connect, to the ocean. So,
mhm,
via now channels, but, probably likely landlocked at one point. But still, with different sea levels and different land masses and so forth, absolutely, I think anything's possible.
mhm.
If not a sibling, at least a cousin. I don't know about you, but I got a lot of cousins, so anything's possible. Yeah. Oh, MH370. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Right,
So Todd and Carmel's comment here. What still puzzles me is the MH370 flight. Amazing to this day and age that anything goes MIA with technology. Absolutely.
right,
I'll say that things don't go missing unless they want to or intend to be missing, and
true.
that's probably still part of the great mystery with Flight 370 is was it intentional? And I think
Now,
more longer
that's
time goes by, I think maybe so.
the one that skirted all the airspaces, right?
Well, actually, I got to look that up quick. I'm thinking it's the flight in Malaysia. Hang on.
Right, but I thought it was, yeah. I think like it
Yeah,
took
it's
off.
Malaysian Airlines.
Yeah, but anyway, um, another interesting fact that I heard this week is the Susquehanna River. We were talking about that earlier.
Mhm.
Is the oldest river in the world, or one of the oldest rivers in the world, and it was actually older than the Appalachian Mountains, which formed around it,
Wow.
and it was actually part of it. That river was when the landmass Eurasia, or whatever the big landmass was. The Susquehanna River was part of that continent, and it moved with the continental
Wow.
drift. And it's got parts that flow north for about 100 miles. Like, it's just one of the most amazing rivers that there is in the world, and it's right in our backyard, Jamie. Well,
Almost
part of
literally. I've lived very, very close to it.
it. So,
Well, and that's no different too. Speaking of landmass breaking, the Appalachians are sisters to mountains in Europe,
right,
and as we were all once conglomerated, and the split, just happened as it happens. The same geography and geology. I'm sorry, geography, but geology is the same
right.
here as it is in the UK.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's caves that they've discovered the same
so
mineral and rock formations.
yeah, it's fascinating.
Hmm.
So anything's possible. So if these cryptids do exist,
Hmm.
um, it's quite plausible that they were all together at one point and became separated because of the continental shifts.
Right. Yep.
Love it. Now we got to go find them, right?
Right.
Let's prove it.
So yeah, definitely an interesting story, Jamie. So
Cool. Yeah, I had fun with this one too, and I knew some, but not all of the details. And again, there's a lot more stories of missing ships, more so than airplanes, but a lot more small craft, type private things than there are commercial boats. But the commercial ones, of course, when they go, they make the news significantly more
mhm.
so. Usually because there's a lot more people involved, but also it's newsworthy for the outlets.
Yep.
So, all right, sir. You guys have anything you want to add to this as we get ready to wrap up? And to go back, it certainly could be a road trip um, to look at the shore. But
Let's
we're
not
gonna.
dive into the.
I don't want to get on a boat in Lake Michigan. I really don't. There's a few things I'll say no to. Um, that might make the list. Although if you twist my arm enough, I'll go.
I mean, I'm up for scuba diving it.
Where you go?
If you're well, only if we can find the gold from the.
Well, I know, right? Yeah.
That's probably out in the middle somewhere, because
Well, what's fascinating to me in that 2 season arc is they found targets, doing side scan sonars and things like that, sonar sweeps. And as they got to dive on those locations, they were boxcars and they were of the era, but they weren't the right boxcars. So, um, it's just it's fascinating. Again, there's a lot of stuff out there in the lake and that's what that's how Professor Holy found this variation of Stonehenge. They were trying to track and map shipwrecks.
right.
And that's actually, that's an ongoing project too in the Bermuda Triangle as well.
Hmm.
There is an organization that is literally diving on, they're scanning for targets as they find things. They're diving on it to try to replicate, not replicate, wrong word. They're trying to understand what the wreck was, what type of wreck it is, whether it's a boat or a plane, and then find anything about each, either or. Planes have markings all over them, and the engines and so forth. They're stenciled, um,
Yep.
uh, not VIN numbers, kind of thing like cars have, but kind of like that.
Serial numbers and so yeah.
Serial numbers. Thank you. I always use better words than I do.
So,
Um, and the same with a lot of ships. Of course, they all have their name on the back, kind of thing, or on the side. But there
yep.
are other
Ships are
all,
everything on
all
the ship.
kinds of things about them that can tell you who they are.
Yeah. The
Um,
anchors had their name, like the ship
yep.
name on the plates had like everything on a
Yeah.
ship is labeled. So
A lot of this stuff is so deteriorated, it's hard to tell what it is, and some things are unnamed, therefore. But they're marking them. They're putting plots on the map to show where they are at least, and then hopefully bring closure to families who lost loved ones.
mm.
And don't know what happened to them.
So I
Hey,
don't know.
speaking of shipwrecks, I want to go back a little bit, and I forgot about this. I want to tell you that this last week, um, when I did the third man syndrome
Right.
weeks ago. One of the topics, or one of the instances, was the survivors of the Endurance in Antarctica and their trek across to a land station to get rescued. And I was 2 weekends ago. I was a Saturday morning. I was up early, which is normal in our house, but before other people.
Hmm.
And I flipped on TV and I thought I'll see what's on Disney on Nat Geo. As I like to watch what are called smart shows, finger quotes, smart shows, and learn something,
Uh-huh.
right? And I came across the documentary for the Endurance, which is the
Okay.
ship, and the tale of the sailors and how they were trying to cross Antarctica, on land, but to sail in first, and then they got caught in the ice as they got waylaid at their departure got waylaid in, I believe, in the Falklands. And they were advised they wait, and they pressed on. And a tale of the ship getting caught in the ice, and then the survival thereafter. And it was a long time,
Right.
and not having a whole lot of resources. It's a fascinating documentary. It's less than 2 hours. I would say it's an hour and 40 minutes or something like that. But it's called Endurance. It's on Disney Plus, but it's on Nat Geo as well. If any of those ways to connect to it,
Okay.
I highly recommend this. It was fascinating. I couldn't turn it off. So
Cool.
I had to have the luxury of having that time to myself, so I didn't have to worry about distractions. But that
Right.
was a really cool one. I don't recommend shows, documentaries very much, but this one was neat,
Right.
and
So
it's topical because they do talk about the trek they had to make and getting across to the land, land station. But I think that's what they call it. But anyway,
yeah.
fighting rescue,
Cool.
the tale of survival, and
So
the third man syndrome comes into play.
yep.
Full
So
circle.
Bert did say I changed my mind. No boat trip. So Bert does not want to do a boat trip. And Todd and Carmela said road trip wearing a life vest.
There it is, covering all their bases.
So
All
yeah.
right, nothing
So
to it but to do it.
nice job, Jamie. Again, information I didn't know before.
Cool.
Now you've piqued my interest, and now I'm gonna have to look at all the stuff buried in or not flooded in Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
Lost.
What else? Well, that's the thing. When we find one thing, what's the next thing? There's more. There's
Right.
more.
Right.
So, I think there's a lot of opportunity there still, even after all these years.
So,
Perfect.
all right. Well, nice job.
Thank you.
So let's talk about what's coming up. I did this for you, Jamie.
Yes.
Next week, I can't believe we're in December already. Next week, the third, I will jump into the Birdcage Theater. Um, in Tombstone. So we've got that. December 10th, Jamie's doing Urban Legends International. So we've got that coming up. And I'm still kicking around the 17th of December. I got some ideas. We'll see what we want to do. And then the 24th and 31st of December, we're going to take a break. I know everybody will miss us, 2 Tuesdays in a row, but there'll be, plenty of family things to do and, celebrate for us on December 31st. We won't be here, but have a good time bringing in the new year.
Absolutely.
So, and then we've got one last investigation. Um, I think I think we're pretty good, Jamie. I looked at tickets. I think it's going to happen.
Yeah,
So
I saw it today too. We there's a minimum. We say this every week, every time we have an event, but there's a minimum needed to have the actual event. So, and we look like we've surpassed that. So, um, looking forward to getting in and digging into the brewery a little bit more.
yeah, it's been a
Every
while
time we
since.
go, we learn something new.
Yeah. So
All right. Well, thanks, Todd and Carmela. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, and lots. Find that turkey coma and a little football and all the fun that comes with all of it.
so. And then one last thing is, where you can find us on social medias. You found us on Facebook or YouTube.
Yep.
We have TikTok, Instagram, or you can email us at paranormallenspodcast@gmail.com. Bert's made that work a couple times. I appreciate that, Bert.
Yep. Absolutely.
Um, and if you're not watching us here, or if you want to catch up with us and watch it again or listen to it again on a podcast app, um, look for Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those things, any of the major ones. You should be able to find us. Um, Jamie, we're in 14 countries now.
14, holy cow. And I'm going to tell you, Chad, I'm so happy all of our catalog is now up and live for viewing.
Yep.
So the original season one, all 62 episodes hit last week. Last one hit last week. And going forward, everything will just be current. So check out the whole thing. Man, there's
Mhm.
lots of stuff to go back on. And start from one and catch up to 83, 4.
Yeah, who knows?
Amazing.
Yep. So, but it's been fun. We're having a good time with it. So,
Absolutely. And
uh,
love the company. So thank you all.
yeah. So, any last thoughts, Jamie?
I want to say happy Thanksgiving, sir, to you, to everyone out there.
Yep.
It's that time where you can all take a pause and just kind of take stock in the things um, that we have and all the family and friends and all the good things. So this season, the holiday season begins.
Yep.
For us, the holiday season starts in October, right? Really, when spooky
Right.
season counts. But sadly, our Halloween decorations went down this week, and yeah, and now Christmas is coming. So, um, but let's pause in between and get through Thanksgiving and have a lot of good times, and
Yeah.
hopefully everybody can congregate around the table and um, just enjoy your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Bert. We appreciate it.
Love you guys
We
too.
love you guys too. So, I hope, just like you said, I hope everybody gets to spend time with family or what's appropriate for your
Yep,
situation. And
exactly.
I'm getting to spend some time with my dad on the holiday and my son, so I'm looking forward to that. And
Yeah,
I told him he didn't have to cook this year. Every year he's been wanting to, he cooks for the four of us, and it's like, Dad, let's just
yeah.
go to a restaurant and relax and just enjoy. So
80 is a magic number on that one, right?
yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
so
Oh,
so
very cool. Well, pass the happy thoughts to Ken as well. Yeah,
I will. Thank you.
appreciate him. He's a great guy. And,
Yep. So, um, if nothing else, we can wrap it up, and we'll be here again next week, Jamie.
yeah, we'll look forward to seeing everybody then. Until then, have a great week. Thank you all.
Yep.
Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Happy
Good night.
Thanksgiving. Good night.